The first question I'd like to ask is in relation to recruitment and
phone on again somewhere, so I know it's your own or whoever, but just might check please, because it does interfere with what you're saying in the system. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Anyway, it's to do with the level of recruitment and the head count of the force. Some recent statistics, Chairman, that I got by way of parliamentary question, that as of the 1st of January, the head count stood at 12,799. I was also informed that on average there's up to 500 people can be out sick on any given day of the week from the force. In addition, that there's a number of approximately 230 who are on incentivised career break, and also that eligible to retire today is a number of 1,498. So when you start doing the additions and the subtractions, you can see that your headcount is under huge pressure. And if you're to try and deliver your policing plan and roll out your strategies, if you don't have the main resource, which is manpower, you're at a serious disadvantage. You mentioned, as we know, that there's 299 people in recruitment. So in terms of approaching the job of providing the service for the country on a medium to long-term basis, you have to engage in multi-annual planning and all the rest. Where do you see the recruitment going in terms of, 300 isn't going to, 300, if you had 300 today, they'd bring your 12,799 back up to 13,000, but you have all the other challenges of people out sick, short-term, long-term, and the retirements. So realistically, what is your requirement going to be for recruitment into the force to maintain it at 13,000, if that's the figure that it's going to be? It's a worry out there in terms of trying to compete with all the challenges that you have if you're not going to have the infusion of new people into the force, and given the exodus that you have in terms of retirement. 1,498 eligible to retire. I know they won't all retire in the same year or on the same day, but it's a significant number. Could I get a comment from you on that?
Okay, and that, if I may, that kind of links back to the question that Powell asked about the optimum number. Are there studies anywhere in the world that have actually looked at this? And because we were in Scotland, you recall, Deputy Collins, and again that came up. Is there an optimum number for population and demographies and so on that we have in Ireland? Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy. I suppose to answer the Deputy's question in the first instance, to remain at 13,000, we're talking about a continuous recruitment of probably about 325 people per annum, and that would just keep us at 13,000. But I think we have to look at how do we maintain that, because, as you say, there are a number, again, and I mentioned about the modelling piece that we're doing at the moment and the variables that need to be. So it's not just the external demographic, but our own demographic. And we're very conscious of the organisational demographic of our own people as well. We're conscious, obviously, of the gender breakdown and where people may decide to opt to family-friendly policies that we have in place. So we're factoring all of those in. Certainly in terms of a comment, what I will say is that I very much welcome the fact that recruitment has recommenced. The 299 people are very, very welcome. I would certainly like to see that as the start of what will be a continuous process of recruitment, because certainly in terms of policing, it is a profession that requires ongoing, continuous recruitment of individuals and making sure that those individuals are equipped, skilled and capable of going out and serving the people of the country. So I would very much like to see that as an ongoing. As I say, the overall modelling that we're doing at the moment is factoring in the external demographics but also the internal demographics, and making sure that insofar as possible we identify what are the optimum numbers that we would need to maintain the service and the level of service that we're providing. And, again, that's something that we're watching very, very closely. To answer your question, Chair, in terms of, yes, some police forces have tried to do this. It's certainly not an exact science. But nevertheless, I think, as I mentioned, the way that we're looking at it in terms of identifying the capacity requirements and the capability gaps and requirements that will actually sustain our transformation programme, but more importantly sustain the level of service that we need to provide to the community. We're very focused on doing that, but we don't have an exact number at this point in time, but we will have an estimated number. But certainly at the moment what I would say is I would certainly like to see it staying around 13,000 and increasing if possible.
Thank you very much. Deputy Collins, another question.
Yeah, it's just my own observation. I think recruitment of 325 per annum is on the conservative side, and I think when you look at the numbers and factoring in that people will have to take holidays and other forces which come into consideration there.
Intervene for a moment. Just one thing strikes me, if you wouldn't mind. The capacity of Templemore to train at any one time. How many particular recruits can it handle at any one time?
Well, we can handle it. It depends on the size of the groups, but at the moment what we have is there are 299 people in training. Because of logistical issues at the college at the moment, some of those people have to live outside the college, but that doesn't in any way impact on the training or the level of training that they get. So we can actually accommodate groups of up to 150 at a time in the college at any given time, and we can keep those groups rolling.
Thank you. Sorry.
On that, and it's still question number one, Chair. What's the maximum throughput you could train in a calendar year, in a 12-month period?
We could certainly, with ease, we could say 125 a quarter. But it's important as well in terms of without impacting on the quality of the training that people are receiving. We could actually manage those in groups. Maybe, again, Mr Dunn might come in there.
Mr Dunn. Yeah.
Just one other comment on that. I think it's important. Over 60% of the training or the development of a newly recruited Garda actually happens out in the station and happens operationally. And that actually is something that we have to be very careful about as well, because the last thing that we would necessarily want to do would be to overburden the front line with a very large increase in the numbers that needed mentoring and training and ongoing development. And that, in fact, was picked up in some of the inspectorate reports as well, challenging us as to the level of support that we're able to give at the front line to people who are undergoing that development. So it's not just a question of the physical capacity of Templemore. The ability to actually absorb and to properly develop people in the front line is also important.
Just an important point. Are you saying that it's a barrier? There's a barrier to recruitment in that getting the recruits out of Templemore and into the community, that there's a barrier there in terms of absorbing those people into the force as it stands, that's one of the factors which could limit the number of people that you could take in. Is that what you're saying?
No, but I think it's something that we're saying is, as Mr Dunn has said, we're very conscious, particularly particularly in light of, for example, the Guerin report, that the impact that we want to make sure that the people that are trained out there, so a significant part of the training and the development of individual members of Garda Síochána is on the job training, and particularly with the new training programme which the current batch of students are undergoing. So these students will come out fully attested with their powers, and when they then go on the job, they will have tutor guards and they will have coaching and mentoring locally in their stations. So one of the things that we're factoring in terms of making sure that the balance is right in each Garda district and division where student probation or Garda are going to, is that to make sure that the proper structures and infrastructure is there to support them in doing the job that they have to do, and particularly in terms of their training and development.
And you're saying 500, you could, at a minimum, you could put through 500 per annum at your ease, you said, Jen?
At ease, yes.
Okay, thanks. Just the
second question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We're not under any time constraint.
Not at all, of course. Go ahead, please.
The issue of Garda reserves, Chairman, I've been contacted by lots of Garda reserves, I'm sure others have. I think there's about 1,100 of them, if I'm right. And it's limited to 10% of the headcount under the 2005 Act, if I'm not incorrect. Not right, it's limited to 10%. Basically what I'm asking is, what's your plan to enhance the complement of Garda reserves that you have? Because people come to me as a public representative, they say, I've applied to become a Garda reserve. You can apply online. And their applications are sitting there with the Public Appointment Service. They're not going anywhere. The point I'm making is this: there's people out there in the community who want to become Garda reserves, who want to give of their time by way of service to their communities. working in conjunction with yourselves. That's the first point. The second point is, or the second question linked to it is, have you any vision or plans to expand the remit or the role of the Garda Reserves and grow it into a unit of the organisation similar to what you have in other foreign jurisdictions, where it will become the feeder, it will become the body of people that will feed in to the main force by way of recruitment. And finally, they're not represented within your organisation. I just want to make this point to you also. They don't have a representative association, and a lot of them feel undervalued. I say that with respect because that's what they're saying to me. Okay, I'm just echoing what they're saying. They feel that they're undervalued by Garda management, is what they're saying to me. They don't have a coordinated official voice, and I think that you should look at creating a formalised structure with them. Okay, you've got the GRA, you've got the AGSI, you've got the various representative levels up through along in the force. So if I could just get a comment on those.
Okay, Commissioner.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Deputy. I suppose as part of our internal Garda survey, we surveyed all members of Garda Síochána, including Garda Reserves, and I think, as Deputy Collins has said, I think it should be put on record that absolutely Garda Reserves are very indicative, and I think they're the epitome of volunteerism in Irish society. They're people who come and give of their own time for very little remuneration, and they want to give something back to the communities in which they live and work. So they're a very, very welcome asset to Garda Síochána. Certainly in terms of the feedback that we got from the Garda Reserves, and we had a number of specific seminars for the Garda Reserves, and we certainly heard exactly what Deputy Collins has said, that some members of the Garda Reserve had a perception that they didn't have any particular point of contact that they could have their voice heard. So what we have done in relation to that is we are appointing a superintendent in charge of the Garda Reserve. That superintendent will have the responsibility for coordinating the Garda Reserve themselves, but also addressing any issues that the Garda Reserve may want to bring to their attention. And also each of the regional assistant commissioners is going to hold a quarterly reserve or seminar with the reserves. In terms of what the vision is, we certainly have identified a number of powers which we will expand to the Garda Reserve, and we're in the final stages of that at the moment in putting the necessary structures and training in place to ensure that that can be implemented. One of the areas that we're looking for at the moment, because a lot of the Garda Reserves come from a very wide range right across the community and have a lot of skills outside of, a lot of them are professional people in their own right, and they have a lot of skills that they can bring to various aspects of the Garda organisation, and we're exploring that at the moment to see where could people be employed that could actually benefit them and benefit the organisation. The Deputy also mentioned in terms of looking at a reserve stream, and something that we're talking to the Public Appointment Service about at the moment, and just exploring what options are available in that regard.
Okay, another question? Final question?
Yeah, finally, I just want to touch on the issue, if I may, Chair, has been aired already in relation to Garda stations, and to ask you maybe to reconsider the policy in relation to it, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you an example in my own constituency, and Senator Heffernan will be aware of this also. The Askeaton district in Limerick was merged into two neighbouring districts, and the station was effectively closed and became operational for an hour or maybe 2 hours a day. And 6 months ago there was a public meeting, and Chief Superintendent Dave Sheehan and the newly appointed Superintendent Tom O'Connor came along, and the community were very annoyed because there had been a spike in crime in the general area, and they gave the members of Garda Síochána who turned up tonight, they gave them a hard time, and the chief, in fairness to him, undertook to go away, and he revisited the opening hours of the Garda station within the capacity that he had within the area. And there was about 400 people at the public meeting. That was 6 months ago. There was a follow-up public meeting 2 weeks ago. There was 20 people turned up. So the situation had greatly improved, and there was credit due to yourselves and everybody within the community and the Community Council. And I think there was a lesson to be learned from that. The station had effectively been closed, and it had been reversed to a situation where it was open pretty much through normal operating hours per day, and the public in the community, in the wider community, felt they were getting a better service, and indeed they know that there's a presence and a visibility. And that was the big issue which came to all of us when we had the closure of up to 140 Garda stations, that there was a diminution in the presence and the service in the particular area, whether it was perceived or otherwise. And I think in particular in relation to Stepaside and to Whitehall and to a lot of the stations which were closed around the country, I think you should revisit it. I know that some of them, it won't be practical in some of the locations because the properties are OPW and that they have been sold. But I just want to offer you that as an experience that I've had as a public representative, and I'm sure others had. I would urge you to reconsider opening some of them on a limited basis as a first instance and compare the results based on the experience of that.
Commissioner, do you want to comment on that?
Thanks, Deputy. And I know last Friday the whole management team actually went to Limerick and we met with the local team in Limerick, and certainly Askeaton and Newcastle West in particular. They were telling us about some of the meetings that were there recently, so I'm very familiar with it. But what again, as I said to Deputy Farris, at this moment in time we don't have any plans to reopen Garda stations. I certainly hear what the Deputy is saying, but I think it is important in terms of crime to say that we do have an anti-crime strategy that we're working on. Operation Fécla and the regional operations that supported that were very effective. We're evaluating those at the moment, and in the coming weeks we will have a new anti-crime strategy which we will be launching, very focused on the areas, and I don't mean just the Limerick areas, but the areas that you're talking about in terms of where pockets of crime are happening, but also making sure that we have the agility to respond to it wherever it is happening. But I think it is important in terms of, because as you say, a lot of it is about reassuring the public and reassuring communities, particularly in rural areas. And certainly, as I said to Deputy Farris, in terms of the level of community engagement that we have and looking at new ways of doing that and working in partnership, that's something that we're very focused on.
Okay, thank you.